Clay Travis with us now on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline, the founder of Outkick, and at Clay Travis on Twitter. What's up, Clay? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Doing awesome. Thanks a lot. Look, Elon Musk is, I've never thought of him as a controversial guy. I guess he is for some people. Whether you like him, dislike him, whether you like what's happening with Twitter or not with Twitter, this is one of the biggest BA moves we have ever seen to say, I don't like the way something's running. Not only am I going to buy it, I'm going to buy it for $45 billion. I don't know we've ever seen something like that happen.
Yeah, and I think you have to give a tremendous amount of credit to Elon Musk, who, look, I love how people are saying, hey, I don't know if this guy can handle Twitter. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute. He put spaceships into space better than NASA. And he also has reinvented the way that we move cars. So those are both, I think, far more complicated than figuring out how to moderate a Twitter board, which is effectively what Twitter is. So I look, you guys know I'm a firm believer in the First Amendment. An absolutist, got banned from CNN for saying I believe in only two things completely: the First Amendment and boobs. And sounds like Elon Musk and I are probably in agreement there. And I'm writing right now, probably 20 minutes after I finish your interview, I'll publish my article sort of analyzing what I hope Elon Musk's tenure at Twitter can accomplish. But I'm a longtime user of Twitter, probably spend way too much time there. And it's been beneficial, I think, certainly to my career. But I'm obviously not pleased with the way that conversations there have gone.
Well, I honestly was on it one time yesterday for 1 second. How bad was the frenzy, and how many people have threatened to boycott?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, there's a blue checkmark brigade frenzy. The left-wingers are convinced now that Twitter is going to sink into the sea. It's funny because when Donald Trump was getting banned, or they were banning a lot of different conservative or just libertarian thinkers as it pertained to COVID, it was amazing to watch the reaction of the left-wingers, which was basically cheering censorship. And I think it's indicative of a larger cultural issue that the left wing in this country has, that they're truly terrified of people being able to say what they actually think. I really do feel like I have one of the best jobs, if not the best job in America right now, because I get to sit down and say exactly what I think about everything under the sun every day. And I like to think that as a result, that's why the Outkick properties continue to grow, including the radio show, because I think there are so many people who don't feel that they have that ability, that they're afraid of what they might post on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or wherever. TikTok is going to somehow cost them a job. And so I think there's a great silencing of America that's going on, and I don't think that's healthy. And so my hope is that conflict is not a bad thing, right? I'm far more troubled when everybody agrees than I am when people disagree. And so my hope is that Elon Musk can institute some important reforms that make Twitter more valuable as sort of this global marketplace of ideas.
It seems to me on Twitter recently that in the last few years that if you are a name that you can be attacked by people, but you can't attack back. If you do, you get banned. Yeah, that doesn't seem fair, right? I mean, free speech works both ways. If you can be attacked, I should be able to defend myself.
Yeah, look, and I think that's a big part of the way that it's broken. Look, I mean, I understand some people who are listening to us are probably not at all active on Twitter because it's a small number of people, but it is the most influential social media platform. Look, if you're incredibly good looking and you're a girl, you're going to make a lot more money on Instagram, right? I've thought for a long time, if you remember back in the day, there used to be like Maxim girls or Stuff girls, and certainly Playboy centerfolds were a big deal. And there were relatively few of those girls, but like everybody knew them, right? Everybody knew Pamela Anderson back in the day. Everybody knew Selma Hayek. Everybody knew, I could run through the Jennifer Love Hewitt back in the day.
Yeah, the first Maxim girl I remember that I first noticed on Maxim nowhere else was Olivia Munn. And I was like,
Olivia Munn.
Who's Olivia Munn?
Yeah, Jessica Alba.
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of girls that became super famous because of Maxim and stuff, and certainly Playboy to a certain extent as well. But now there's like 1 million girls who are on Instagram all competing on a day-to-day basis, and it's almost impossible to have any one or two that everybody knows, like it would have been the case back in the 90s, the 80s, and the early 2000s. The reason why I bring that up is Instagram is primarily a visual medium, and the better looking in general you are, the better you're going to do on Instagram. Twitter is a written medium, and there's so much content rushing out on a day-to-day basis, so difficult for people to keep up that to me, Twitter that's one reason Twitter is so influential, because it's a one-stop shop for a lot of people who otherwise would have to go to 40 different websites to be on top of everything. Well, instead, you can go look at the 200, 400, whatever the number is, people that you follow, and see what they're saying on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, what's interesting about that, and Clay Travis is with us, Outkick founder, at Clay Travis on Twitter. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. For what we do for a living, and you know how this works, Clay, because you've done shows for years, is at some point in the morning, I start digging through the internet to find, okay, here's something that would be cool to talk about. Here's what happened last night. I go to one site to do that now. It's Twitter. I mean, it compiles it and serves it to me the way I want it served. I almost never go to ESPN.com. Never.
Yeah, unless I'm checking a score, I'm the same way. I don't go to pay attention to those sites, and I think that's been evolving for years. The way that I wrote was Twitter made the individual matter more than the brand, and I think that's a significant cultural shift. And what I mean by that is, if you like ESPN, Stephen A. Smith matters more than ESPN, right? Colin Cowherd matters more than FS1. Skip Bayless, whoever your talent is, you follow those guys. And on a lesser scale, like, I matter more than Outkick, right? That's not that Outkick doesn't matter. Obviously, we've got a lot of talented people there. But the individual brand is more important. I always say, like, the name on the back of the jersey is more important than the name on the front of the jersey. And I do believe that's true for people who are, particularly successful in the social media space. And that represented a pretty fundamental alteration in the power dynamics where, and I think, by the way, that's also true to a large extent in athletics, right? To a large degree, the coach and the player matter way more than the individual school does in college athletics. Certainly in pro sports, the individual talented players, Aaron Rodgers matters more than the Packers, right? Patrick Mahomes matters more than the Chiefs. I don't know necessarily that was always true before, but I think Twitter is emblematic of the rise of the individual. And that can be good and bad. And there are certainly a lot of conflicts. But what I'm saying is, basically right now, Twitter is focused way too much, and I'm talking about the collective mass of Twitter, on deciding what is and what is not appropriate, right? That's basically the obsession of the internet. I always say the internet is basically it's focused on two things primarily, on whether something's appropriate or not, and then what the blame is when something goes bad, right? Like, the internet is just a big blame factory. So it can be a game, right? The team loses. Internet just goes into hyperdrive on why did that team lose? Who's to blame? Somebody sends a tweet. Is it appropriate or inappropriate joke? Twitter is on the case of what is appropriate and what is inappropriate. It doesn't matter, by the way, what it is. That basically sums up the totality of much of social media. Is it appropriate or not? And who's to blame is like 95% of all the conversation that goes on Twitter. It feels like on a day-to-day basis a lot of the time.
Hey, shifting gears real quick, Clay. Matt Hayes from Saturday Down South did a piece yesterday. Kirby Smart, best coach in college football. How long can he keep that title? We talked about it yesterday. I disagree. I'm a Kirby fan. I think you're a Kirby fan. What would Kirby Smart need to do to become the best coach in college football?
Well, Nick Saban would need to retire. I think is an easy answer, right? You had Urban Meyer retire, and I think if you look at Urban Meyer's resume and you look at Nick Saban's resume, those are the two guys. Maybe Dabo too, although we'll see how much Clemson can come back after what was a fairly disappointing season. Was that an aberration, or was that a symptom of a larger decline that's going on at Clemson? I think that question is certainly out there. But I think Nick Saban would need to retire. I think it's impossible to say that Nick Saban's not the best coach in college football until he decides to hang it up, or until the wheels just came off, which we haven't seen any sign of, and suddenly Alabama goes 7-5, and then follows it up with an 8-4. Then maybe you can start to argue for somebody else. But right now, Nick Saban is the best coach in college football.
I'm interested to what you think of. I know you're not always watching the NBA, but to see what has happened to the Brooklyn team with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, no Ben Simmons, and possible the breakup of that roster after getting swept by the Celtics. Do you have a big take on what happened to Kevin Durant and that team?
Well, first of all, I love that suddenly you're able to criticize an athlete for not competing, right? Because I was told that Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka were incredibly brave for refusing to compete because of a variety of different issues. And then Ben Simmons, I saw just get absolutely lacerated in every direction for not playing in this series. So I thought that was an interesting cultural shift that's suddenly gone on. And what does it do? It confirms what I've said for a long time, which is male athletes are held to a much higher standard when it comes to performance than female athletes are. I think that's just a fact. And as part of that, look, I mean, they lost 2 games that were basically on the fine line between victory and success. I watched game 1 when Jason Tatum, I believe it was, scored at the buzzer to win game 1. If the Nets win that game, who knows what might happen in the series? And then obviously they lost a couple of close games in Brooklyn by and large. I think it is fascinating that Kevin Durant ran away from the Warriors. And I think he has to be questioning that choice on some level, because if he had stayed with the Warriors, even with all the injuries that they had, I think they would have won. They'd win the championship this year probably. And I just wonder how much of a loss he has suffered by deciding to move cross country. And then I think this year, look, I agreed with Kyrie Irving's stance on players should be able to decide whether or not they get the COVID shot or not. So I think that was actually, we talk about courage and bravery a lot. That was actually courageous and brave to me of Kyrie Irving, because he left tens of millions of dollars, I believe, on the table by refusing to get that COVID shot. And just about every athlete that I know of always makes the choice that gets them more money. So I thought that was a incredibly courageous decision by him. But I think it's fair to say that it really kind of made the whole season feel strange. And then I think you have to give some credit to the Celtics. I think the Celtics are a really good basketball team. They may go on and win the East and potentially win the NBA championship. So, when you break this all down, I think the Nets in general are certainly a disappointment on the season. But I think there are a lot of reasons why that happened, as opposed to just focusing on the final series.
All right, go follow Clay on Twitter and Clay Travis. Read him at Outkick and see him on Fox. Thank you for the time, Clay. Always fun.
Hey, appreciate you all having me. Thanks a lot.
All right, buddy. Have a good week. Clay with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.